really grateful every one of you is here. We're recording this session and we'll post it on our website for others to see in coming days. This is an opportunity we enjoy every year to gather together for a holiday party to reflect on the year past, to make some, to express some hope for the year to come. We did this in person before COVID. ICUJP has been in existence for 22 years. We were convened in the wake of 9/11 by the Reverend George Regas of blessed memory. He brought a group of faith activists together, and every term, every word in our name speaks to what we're about. We are interfaith communities, not just clergy and leadership. We are interfaith communities united, pulling together for something, not just against something. And what that is justice and peace. Justice coming first and then peace. So we were founded on the principle that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. And for 1,000 Fridays, we have put on these webinars every single Friday with a few days off for holidays. It's been the center of my work and the work of so many people on this screen and others. And the core of these Friday forums is the ability to invite and attract wonderful speakers, which is true today of Phoebe Milliken. We're going to have a slightly unusual beginning. We always introduce ourselves around the screen so that speakers and newcomers get to know who they're spending time with. And we have a reflection. I see that Dr. Ruby has joined us. Then we have a speaker, Phoebe in this case, and we have a special presentation by Carol Francis. I'm going to vary the plan slightly. We're going to merge our usual brief introductions with more of a 1-minute introduction in which I'd ask each one of you to express what it is that you hope for in the year ahead, either in your personal life, among your family and wider circles of friends, or in your community more broadly, or in our country and in the world. But I want to start, so we're kicking it off, with Ruby's reflection. And if you're ready for that, Ruby, I'd appreciate it.
My topic today is no matter what we're going on, we can teach and empower to be in support of positive changes. And I'm so happy to be a part of this ICUJP reflection at this time with Phoebe Milliken, who designed and directs the Master of Arts of International Peace Building, and for all of the things that she's worked with together in international cohorting with Christians, Muslims, and Jews to develop interrelationship peace building skills through her empowerment and teaching, because I'm excited about what we are venturing in on seeing how we can, as an international world group, can continue to work together with the vicissitude and how we are good together. That we have learned that nothing occupies the same space at the same time, and the divine, there is no duality, for righteous goodness, the highest and best that we have worked with and that we're working with now is our new enlightenment, all that we're doing, all that we're bringing people together for the empowerment to teach our young in support of future growth. So as I expressed the highest and best that we have enlightened and empowered to teach our support of future growth. And when I say future growth, I'm talking about these seniors supporting these juniors that are coming in and supporting them into where their divine energy is and their enlightenment, what excites them. When you really want to be in a place where you are into fulfillment, what can you do? What can you do? Well, take time to empower yourself by going into your choices, new visions, dreams. Even if you see your life changing, see yourself wise, healthy, financially secure, in harmonious relationships, no matter what goes on in the world. See yourself in your own venture for divine enlightenment and love. See peaceful, loving thoughts, actions, reactions, and choices in the silence. Your inner and outer is your choice. And we are here at ICUJP as a team, even though we are all of those religions and some that aren't even religious, it's okay. But we're all together because we're human beings. And we're human beings that have stopped blessing war and violence. So as we have begun to really recognize that nothing occupies the same space at the same time, that we are truly accepting the blessings that we are. One, no matter what color, nationality, or anything else, what's going on in the world, that right now, at this special time of the year, that we can take this time and keep it going on. No matter what else is going on in the world, we can take our own breath and see that divine power within, because that's our strong sense of responsibility and values. It's our exploring with our heart, mind, soul, spirit, like a 2-year-old, releasing all worry, apprehension, anything else, except seeing that power of good within, which is supporting ICUJP. And so as we go forward, we know this world is going forward. And I've had.
Thank you, Ruby. I always enjoy your reflections. It always gives me a lot to think about, and I appreciate it. We are ICUJP. We depend on the kindness of friends and strangers to support our work. When you got the announcement for this event, as well as in the recording that you'll may be receiving, there's a place to donate to ICUJP. We are a mighty and struggling small organization, and we depend on contributions to underwrite our small paid staff. We appreciate your generosity, particularly at this time of year. And we hope that you will include ICUJP among those worthy causes that deserve your support. I want to make a few announcements that on January 11, in Los Angeles, in front of the downtown Federal Building, we will be having our annual Close Guantanamo rally. I'm very grateful that John Crampner is with us today. For over a decade, John has helped us organize this event every year. It is shameful that Guantanamo continues to exist. John, this will be a surprise to you, but would you take a few minutes to describe the rally, some of the aspects that you've been able to organize so far, and what the purpose of the rally is?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. As you say, this was a surprise, so I don't have the list of speakers right in front of me. But we'll have Mohammed Tadsar of the ACLU of Southern California, a new speaker this year, Lisa Hajar of the University of California at Santa Barbara, and about 7 or 8 other speakers, which my just having woken up fogged brain cannot conjure up at this moment. As you suggested, this is, I mean, basically I started doing this because of all the Bush Cheney horrors. This is the one that just sticks in the craw my most, sticks in my craw the most, and that's why I'm helping to organize it. The I will mention, as I periodically do, while not trying to sound like a nudge or a nag, that we're still short a couple of detainees. So if anyone wants to step forward right this moment and be saved, brothers and sisters, then please feel free to do so. Anyway,
John, describe that tableau when you say we need detainees. These are
all right, right,
fictional portrayals.
right. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people remember the infamous photo at Guantanamo of American soldiers kind of, barking at these kneeling, orange-hooded, orange jumpsuited, black-hooded detainees. So we recreate that with a tableau of 6 detainees. We do have 3 so far. Carol Francis Likens, Dave Clennon, and Anthony Manousis. And if we can get a few more, I will be most grateful. If people can, tell people of their acquaintance about this so we can get as much attendance. If you have any contacts in the media, please let them know that. That's pretty much my presentation. Thank you.
And what time is it at the Federal Building?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's from 12 noon to 1:30 p.m. This is the downtown Los Angeles Federal Building at 300 North Los Angeles Street, 90012 zip code.
And we have 2 major co-sponsors this year.
Actually, in terms of sponsors, oh, phooey, hold on one second.
John,
Well, we have, yes,
I was
go on.
going to just say I sent it to you on the chat, their email that you sent me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's Amnesty International USA, the National Religious Campaign Against Torture, and also Shane Cuhey. Yes, thank you. And we have about those are the sponsors, and we have about a dozen endorsers.
Thank you. I do hope as many people in Los Angeles will attend. It is a core event for us, and just a tragedy that we still have to actively seek closing this barbaric detention center. I also want to briefly announce that in January 14, we're having a retreat at the St. Camillus Center to take stock of ICUJP, where we've been, where we're going, giving everyone who joins us on Friday the opportunity to give your input. And you'll be getting an announcement by email on both Close Guantanamo and the January 14 retreat. I'd like to turn now to expanded introductions. These are 1-minute opportunities for each of you. I will call on you by name. And for those who've been here before, in addition to a simple introduction of who you are and some of your relevant affiliations, today we're asking that you simply give us a thought on what is your hope for 2024 and your future personally and as a community and as a member of the world community. So I'm going to choose Rick Banyales first.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. So I'm the communications and social media person for the group. And I remember when I was really young, as I stayed home from school for some reason. Was probably sick and was watching daytime TV, which I never did, right? And there was somebody being interviewed by some talk show host. It could have been Mike Douglas or something like that. And so someone asked him what his hope was, and he said, "I hope the human race grows up." And I was probably about 10 or 8 or 10 years old, and I'm still hopeful that that's going to happen someday. And we had a great speaker here, George Lakey, who kind of was excited about the dichotomy between people really pushing back on the idea that um, that you can have a peaceful and compassionate world, and others that were trying to hang on to whatever was helpful to keep them in power and keep them relevant and keep them keep them financially healthy with checks coming in from fear. And it was important for me to see George Lakey's program, and I think that it made a really good impact on me. And if you go to that Linktree link that I put in the chat, you'll see not only a link to our YouTube channel, but to things like a PayPal link if you'd like to do a PayPal thing on Eventbrite. You can see some of the work that some of our speakers have done, like books by Sonali Kolharkar, Greg Palast, other things like that. So, I hope that it seems like what we've been struggling for is starting to resonate, and I hope the waves get bigger.
Thank you, Rick. I love how you ellipsed into a commercial for ICUJP in your introduction. I appreciate that.
And if you act now.
I do want to use this moment to thank Rick. He's been a backbone of our work all year. He does a tremendous amount of work. We've had no communications director who's been more hands-on, active, innovative, and creative in attracting and organizing and inviting speakers and keeping all of our communications, elevating us on social media. So at this time of year, we're particularly grateful to you, Rick. Let me go around the screen for what we're doing. Let's see what Rebecca her hopes for the future are.
My hopes for the future is to be part of the movement in California animal welfare to improve conditions for the animals that are in our municipal pounds. I call them pounds. Other people call them shelters. But my colleagues had a huge victory yesterday in the California Supreme Court. LA County Animal Control has been fighting us for years on their process for killing animals, for determining who which animal gets killed, and they've been killing a lot for behavior. My colleagues brought a lawsuit about 3 years ago saying that this violated the Hayden law that was enacted by Senator Tom Hayden back in 2000. And an appeals court agreed with us, and the Supreme Court upheld the ruling yesterday. So this changes LA. You're going to be hearing about, you should be hearing about this in the news in the coming days. It's going to completely change animal welfare practices in LA County as well as the rest of the state now. So we anticipate a lot of pushback from the animal control lobby, and it's the same as dealing with the police associations like LA sheriffs. So in Sacramento, we anticipate that they're going to try to change the laws now to make it easier for them to continue killing animals, especially dogs, for behavior. So that's my hope, to be involved in that process with some of Senator Hayden's former legislative aides who helped him write the Hayden Act and keep his legacy alive, because he loved animals.
Wonderful, Rebecca. Thank you so much. One of the joys this year is having you join us more regularly at ICUJP. We appreciate it so much. Let me turn to Rose Leibowitz for a 1-minute expanded introduction and what you hope for.
Oh, sorry, I'm about to cough. I just wanted to start with a minor success that those of you who are regular will maybe remember that a few months ago we had a presenter called Barbara Motz, and she was talking about the efforts, the grassroots efforts, a very small group of us were making to make Metro, which does belong to the city, a little bit more kind of receptive to affordable housing, an enormous development they're doing. Anyway, it was before the council this week, and a lot of us wrote in comments, people attended. I'm just going to read you a little bit from the email that she sent out. The district NoHo complex will be better because of our efforts. From our past work, today's vote, and the new conversation with the developer, we have achieved a firm commitment to an additional 55 income-restricted units, bringing the total number of affordable homes in the development now to 366. No segregated swimming pools, that was just appalling. All community residents will have access to amenities like the pools at the market rate building. All affordable units will stay affordable for 99 years. The full term of the land lease, the typical one, is 55-year term for covenants. The developer will pursue flexible zoning to allow the conversion of office space to residential, if that makes sense in the future. We haven't finished yet, we're after more, but I think it's just great that this grassroots effort, basically it was 4 people, have actually managed to begin to move a boulder. And I suppose my hope is for more of that for next year. Thank you.
Wonderful, Rose. Thank you. I'm going to turn to Dick Bunce, a brief introduction of yourself and what you hope for.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Happy holidays, everyone. I live out in the Pomona Claremont area, and active with Claremont United Methodist Church, and also with Cobb Institute, which I think is mainly focused on the pursuit of ecological civilization. And also I'm active part of Latino Roundtable in Pomona, which has embraced a big, ambitious project called Wellbeing Economy, trying to work for an economy that works for all. We just got a great big grant for this program, which is exciting. My hope for 2024 is rooted in the reality of where we are as a country. There must be half a dozen things I'd love to see happen, but main thing is that we not have a dictator elected president in 2024. I mean, it just comes down to that for me. Lynn Cheney has said that we are sleepwalking toward dictatorship, and I think she's absolutely right. A lot of pieces are falling in place that work to the benefit of Donald Trump and his candidacy. So hopefully there can be an organizing effort, which would include this group, to have some role in making sure that democracy does not disappear in this country.
Thank you, Dick. Very, very sober concerns. Let's turn to a new friend who's joined us, Katie O'Leary from the Hartford International, and briefly introduce yourself and what you're hoping for.
Good morning, everybody. What a wonderful room of good people this is. And my colleague Phoebe and I are really honored to be with you. So I'm Katie O'Leary. I'm the Director of Engagement at Hartford International University for Religion and Peace. And like your organization, we're very deliberate about that word "for." We recently changed our name a couple of years ago to better describe who we are. We are a multi-faith, intentionally multi-faith university where people of different religions, different spirituality, no religion, just all come together and learn. Graduate level, I also direct something called continuing and professional education, where we do things like the program that Phoebe is about to offer this morning to help people navigate in a religiously complex world. My
Wow.
hope, I would ditto Richard's hope, very much so. One of my morning thoughts that I put out there in the world is, may all beings be well, may all beings be happy. It's a simple, enormous wish.
Simple and enormous. You're so right. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. I'm looking at Donna Perkins. Briefly introduce yourself and describe your hope for the future.
Hi, morning, everybody. I'm calling from work, but I am an activist with a bunch of different organizations, including Black Lives Matter, LA chapter. I'm spiritually connected to Neighborhood Unitarian Universalist Church, at which I ran a truth and reconciliation process. And my hope is to see more educational efforts like what's being presented today. I specifically logged on from work today to learn about this very important skill that you're going to be teaching us today, so that we can thwart the efforts of the fascists. And so I have the same hope as Mr. Bunce.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Learn and listen. Very important. Chris Ponette, your introduction and your hopes for the future.
Good morning and happy Advent, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, solstice, all of our wonderful feasts that celebrate light during these days. I'm pastor at St. Camilla's Church in Los Angeles and director of spiritual care at LA County General Medical Center. And I would just note, yesterday I had the privilege for about the 15th year to preside over the burial of the unclaimed. We buried 1,937 persons yesterday. It's always a very somber day for me. These are people who died in 2020 in LA County, and the county is one of the few places in the world that keep these persons cremated remains for 3 years to give families a chance to claim them. So I come out of that, spending several days planning that and experiencing that with a multi-faith, interfaith experience. And with a partnership that we've had for many years with Street Symphony, who has spoken here before. They had 11 of their choral singers and one of their finest violinists playing. So my hope is that we get to a time where we don't need a service to bury unclaimed people, that we walk by and they were somehow connected to people. And I also join Dick that for the next year, we are spiraling toward a return to craziness and more craziness. And so I hope that we can see the polls and everything move in a different direction, and pray for our vision as a nonviolent movement to become the voice for Ukraine and Palestine and Israel and so many other places. So lots of big hopes, and my local hope is how we can connect with people who are unclaimed and unnamed. I would also say, in a brief hope, when I started doing the service 15 years, the county has done this since 1896. But when I started 15 years ago, most of the people were unnamed and unclaimed. And one of the gifts of science and DNA and ancestry is that out of the 1937, only about a dozen were unnamed. So we've made progress in an awkward way. So I'm filled with hope, and that means I and we all have a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, you remind me of your work on the unclaimed that you've mentioned in the past. It breaks my heart to think there are human beings who have died without a family member, a friend, or anyone to claim them. It's unbearable. A little bit of business, Chris, in the chat. John Crampner asked if you're able to speak at the January 11 close Guantanamo rally. And you can either respond now or check your schedule and let me and John Crampner know. Let me turn.
Thank you.
Let me turn to Phil Way. Short introduction and your hopes.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I'm Phil Way. I'm with the Orange Grove Friends Meeting in Pasadena, and a member of the ICUJP board. Thing that's been probably most on my mind this past year has been the Israel-Gaza situation. I get really distraught over that from time to time. And I've been using my Facebook persona to express that, so much so I think some people are getting tired of me. But the things I hope for are that we get done with some wars this year. I'm not hopeful about that, but it's what's on my mind. One of the things that has become very disturbing about the situation Israel-Palestine is the hate that is now being expressed between supporters of the Palestinians and supporters of Israeli policy. It's gotten real ugly, and it's troubling. Hate the people who support the people you hate, and it's truly, truly disturbing. Anyway, I remain concerned about things with police violence or misconduct, as it's weakly called. Anyway, and there's so many issues on the table. I deeply hope that we can be done with this Trump circus and lay it to rest. But it sure left a lot of angry people in its wake who we probably need to be concerned about. The other thing about the whole Trump phenomena and the Israel-Gaza situation is that I am very disappointed in our president for his strong support for the Israeli I'm going to call it a genocide. And I just can barely believe that the U.S. is coming down on the side of a mass genocidal war, if you want to call it that. I'm not sure it's a war. I think it's something
Yes.
different. Anyway, but that disturbs me to the point where I don't know how I can put my vote somewhere intelligent next year. It's very troubling.
Thank you, Phil, very, very much. I'm going to turn to, and using his full title, the Reverend Deacon Daniel Tam, your brief introduction and your hopes for the future.
Thanks, Steve. I'm Daniel Tam, and I am a deacon in the Episcopal Diocese of Los Angeles, which covers around 5 counties in Southern California. And I'm also chair of Interfaith Solidarity Network. I guess, you know, I already see what my schedule is going to be like in January. And there's a lot of housing justice with Faith Collaborative to End Homelessness, capacity building workshops in January for faith-based organizations. So there's that. As chair of LA Faith and Ecology Network, we're going to take up a notch our pressure on climate finance against large institutions. And January 16th in the morning, the day after MLK Day, we're hosting In the Spirit of MLK Peace. And it's going to be about how do we find that in ourselves, and how do we live it every day and spread it in the world. And I think one other hope for the year is defending democracy. I don't think we have any alternative in 2024, but to be bending every effort that we have available to defend democracy. That's what's at stake this year. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Let me turn to John Crampner.
Thank you, Steve. I'll try to be mercifully brief. As I often say, I'm an agnostic Jew and freelance activist. My hope, unsurprisingly enough, is that, what the heck is that noise? Anyway, my hope is that Guantanamo is closed, that reparations are made to the surviving victims, that they're allowed to travel freely, that reparations also go to the families of people who did not survive Guantanamo and the CIA black sites, and that criminal prosecutions be initiated of Bush, Cheney, and all subsequent presidents who have failed to close it, along with all leading members of Congress. I will not hold my breath in that regard, but that's what I hope. And as a Jew, I have to say, and I'm not sure, going back how far I would have said this, I would really like to see the Genocide Convention invoked against Israel. I think it's horrifying that 3 generations ago, European Jews were the victims of a genocide, and now Israeli Jews, not all of them, but a whole lot of them, key placed ones, are perpetrating one. This horrifies and disgusts me. Anyway, that's the scoop.
Thank you, John. Let me turn to Anthony for your brief introduction and your hopes.
Good morning, everybody. I am Anthony Manousis. I'm calling in from Pasadena, where I'm a member of the Orange Grove Friends Meeting and also co-founder of Making Housing and Community Happen. Like a lot of you, what fills me with despair is the massacre that's going on in Gaza and also the treatment of Palestinians in the West Bank. As well as, this what's happening in Ukraine and the displacement of Armenians and many other things that are going on in this world. What gives me hope is that I attend every week a vigil in front of Judy Chu's office, and I am so happy to see so many young people under the age of 30. In fact, funny story, one of our elders who was organizing it encouraged everybody to sing "We Shall Overcome." And a lot of the young people didn't know the words because they were so young. But, as I shared with all of you, the students at Haverford, Brown, and many other universities are speaking out. I think this is radicalizing a lot of young people who are aware that this war machine here in our country and in Israel is something that needs to be changed. As far as my personal concern, of course, is ending homelessness and housing insecurity. And what gives me hope is that we were able to pass SB 4, which rezones religious land and college land for affordable housing statewide. That's going to open up 170,000 acres potentially for affordable housing, and it will allow a lot of religious institutions to build affordable housing and fulfill their mission. Finally, as many of you said, I think our biggest challenge this year is to defend democracy and to combat it's almost like a political mental illness in our country that has trickled down from the top and is infecting so many Americans, and we really need to address that. What gives me hope is George Lakey, who came to speak to us about periods of polarization being opportunities for significant change. They can be change for the better or change for the worse, but I feel we're in a period where dramatic change is about to take place, and we need to work very hard to make sure that it's a positive change.
Thank you, Anthony, very, very much, and for everything you do every day. Maggie Hutchinson.
Well, I have very little energy. I've just finished another bout of COVID and the Paxlovid and everything. So 1 every 3 years, I guess I can keep that up. But the last time I was excited about an election, I did voter registration with the American Friends Service Committee in 1964. And we were particularly involved because we wanted to be sure that Goldwater didn't win. And look what we got. The war in Vietnam. So with Johnson. So I'm having trouble getting excited about the candidates I'm seeing that are up there now. But I would like to have something like that I could really get involved with, because I mean, other than the little dabbling in closed Guantanamo and things that we do, I do not have a burning desire for anything except to have a neat house and good relations with my grandchildren. I have a very small insular spread right now because of not feeling well. But when I do get well, I'd like to have something that I felt really, really committed to and proud to be part of it, which is this group. That's it, for me. You are the thing, the inspiration for me, and I certainly don't hear anything here that I am unhappy with, and I certainly do get inspired with many things, but I haven't found my calling. Thanks.
Thank you, Maggie. Feel better and recover quickly. Dr. Ruby, your brief introduction and your hope.
Yes, good morning again. And I tell you, as I expressed before, that this group is a part of the world. And you're talking to right now, or I said, I'm speaking as an activist. I have been an activist since I was a child. And when they said I don't remember, but they were telling me I wasn't running away, but I was exploring. And I was very fortunate in the 40s because I had all nationalities as friends and all colors. And all animals, because we had a backyard full of animals. And when I found out that they were eating them, when I came home from school looking for like Charlie to see where he was, and I'd hear one of my uncles say, "Oh, Charlie sure was good." I did not eat meat until I was married. And my children's father made me sit down and eat meat. But anyway, my interest and as an activist now, I'm involved in several different areas. One is I encourage all of you to be sure and do what you can with the closed Guantanamo. I have participated before, but right now my physical body isn't running and jumping, so my mind, heart, and spirit is still working, and this is where I'm going. And I work with the ceasefire, which is a gang related in Los Angeles, and with youth. And then also, I thought I said, like, for my heart right now, it's working with the youth and with the international communities, but international youth. And I was thinking, what could I do? And so I came up with these 7 topics. And the 7 topics basic is like seniors, which would have subtopics. And the first one, and you've all spoken
Ruby,
about
thank
it.
you, Ruby.
One was animals, and second was creative arts, third was environment, fourth is relationship, fifth is science, we have health, and we have security. We have all of these things that we're able to support and see these children to work with, because these children are intelligent and smart, and they need us. So this is my vision right now for this coming year.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you so much. Let me get the rest.
My hope for 2024 is more peace in the world, and more young people doing peace work, and more young people speaking up for themselves, more young people being peace activists and motivating their peers to be peace activists too. I am so grateful for ICUJP and everybody on the board, our friends, and I look forward to a wonderful, wonderful year and our retreat. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Carol Francis, this is just the time for your 1-minute introduction and hope. We'll have your special presentation later on.
Yeah, Carol Francis Likens, and I am a board member ICUJP, and I'm hopeful that as horrible as the situation, the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza and also in the West Bank, and I would love to see a commission taking up Israel, but also taking up Biden and Blinken and others in the United States and accusing them of war crimes, because the U.S. has to learn it's not above the law. And what gives me hope in that is that this genocide has brought out more activists for Palestine. They have never been activists for anything. and the numbers swell, and they're really exciting. Jewish Voice for Peace, and if not now, having huge numbers of their activists out there saying "not in my name" really gives me. And I would like to say also on a personal level, I'm finally feeling that my screenwriting, which is very political, is finally getting somewhere and a little bit closer to being realized in the movies. And my book of poetry is available and that kind of thing. And all that's part of my political work because that's how I express myself. I'm a writer.
Excellent. Dave Clennon.
Good morning, everyone. Dave Clennon, member of ICUJP since 2013, Jewish Voice for Peace, and the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. Last night was day 8 of Hanukkah. I'm the only Gentile in our family, the only Goy, so I am the keeper of the menorah. And I enjoy the observation of that ritual every year. And my prayer this year to Adonai, the sovereign of all, was to let Gaza live. And my hope for the future is that eventually we will see one democratic, secular state from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, where all people are equal and people are free to come and go. And sorry about that. I was timing myself and I don't know how to stop the timer.
Thank you, Dave.
So one last point, I think that it was good news. Rebecca brought us good news, and Katie said that every day she begins thinking about all beings. So I just I think it's great news that the animals that we keep as pets and who get lost and who lose their homes may have a somewhat different future. And I just want to mention that a dairy cow has the same intelligence and the same emotional life as our beloved dog Willa. And I hope that in the future we'll learn to treat dairy cows with the same respect and love and care that we do the pets we keep in our home. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Behind the iPhone, if I'm correct, is Donna. Is that you? I'm seeing iPhone. Are you still with us? Who's ever at iPhone, if you come off mute and introduce yourself. Oh, did they? Oh, there, Donna.
I think that's Lucy Bailey.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw it. Lucy, go ahead.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for doing this wonderful program. It's so wonderful to be inspired by all of our members. And I don't know that I can say a specific hope for 2024 because I've been more upset than in a long time about what's going on in the Middle East. But I will say that The Chabad in Pacific Palisades sends out a magazine called Soul Wise. And this year, they sent a picture of a little child whose face is reflected by the menorah. And I was able to lead my fellows in the historical society that I belong to in a chorus of "This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine," based on the beautiful photograph of that little child. So I would share that with you all. And I don't know, Anthony says young people don't know the words to some of these songs, but it should be easy to teach them. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Thank you, Steve, for calling on me.
Oh,
And
thank you
all.
so much. Well, I'm so eager to turn to Phoebe Milliken. We indirectly met in an unusual way. We were invited, each of us, by an NPR reporter shortly after the October 7 attacks on Israel to speak about how can we talk about that conflict, which has only worsened. And I was so impressed by what Phoebe had to say on that broadcast. I talked to Rick about it. Rick reached out to her, and we're so blessed to have her with us today. I've asked her to personally fill you in, but I can tell you this much, that Phoebe is designs and directs the Master of Arts in International Peace Building at Hartford International University for Religion and Peace. Prior to coming to Hartford, she worked for Plowshares Institute, which many of us know about. She has really an extraordinary and detailed history because she's been working on international education since 1996. So I'm eager to turn the program over to her. Welcome, Phoebe.
Thank you, Steve. It's a real pleasure to be here, and good morning, everybody. I really appreciate ICUJP inviting me to talk to you this morning. Um, I am on the faculty of Hartford International University for Religion and Peace. As Katie mentioned, we're a graduate school which focuses on interreligious dialogue with degrees in chaplaincy, interreligious studies, and the program that I lead on international peace building. That degree brings students together from around the world. They're Christians, they're Muslims, they're Jews. The real focus is on community peace building. The cohort is international, but the focus really is on community level peace building. So much of what I hear each of you doing in your introductions, I was like, yes, these are the sorts of things that my students work on, in all the different countries they come from. We have students from Africa, from Asia, from the United States. Continuing on your theme of what gives you hope, my students are what give me hope. They are remarkable people doing incredible work, and it is a thrill to work with each new group each year. So they are what give me hope year after year, that there are people who dedicate their lives to peace building. So they thrill me. I am here today as part of our continuing and professional education program, which provides information, tools, and skills that help individuals and organizations thrive in religiously complex worlds. And I'm really glad that your Friday forums and our continuing and professional education program give me this opportunity to talk to you about active listening, which for me is really the essence of peace building. And active listening is a familiar phrase, but what is it? What is it actually? How is it different from just hearing things? Why is it worth doing? How do you do it? We're going to explore those questions in the next few minutes, and then we'll open it up for some conversation. So I'm going to bring up my screen here. All right. Let's see. Move us forward. It's not moving me forward. Hang on just a moment.
Mhm.
There we go. That's the screen I want to be showing. All right. So we're particularly talking about active listening in divisive times because we recognize that many of us are finding ourselves in conflict when we're talking with others, whether that is what many of you referenced already about the violence in Israel and Palestine, or about our political divisions, particularly with this contentious year coming up, election year, or about issues which seem to always be with us, like gun violence, again, seeing recent mass shootings in Las Vegas and Lewiston, Maine. All of these things, we find ourselves in conflict when we have these conversations with others with different views. And so, since this is about conflict, I want to start with my favorite definition of conflict. And I recognize that it's a little bizarre to have a favorite definition of conflict, but it goes with the territory of teaching about peace. So, my favorite definition of conflict comes from David Anderson Hooker, who is a scholar of peace building and restorative practices. He says conflict is two or more ideas or intentions sharing space. I love this definition because it makes conflict totally normal. Conflict is something that is part of everybody's interactions with their family, their friends, their colleagues, and it isn't wrong. It's just human. Where we get into trouble is when the conflict, or specifically sort of which intention is the right one in a conflict, becomes more important than the relationships in that conflict. Active listening is a strategy for prioritizing relationship over agreement because it's a real investment of time and attention. Time and attention, as we know, are actually two rather scarce resources for many of us these days. Now, sometimes it's okay for conflicting ideas to keep on sharing space. And if that's the case, you definitely don't want to lose a relationship because of it. Sometimes you do need to come to some sort of an agreement. However, if you allow a conflict to trash your relationship, your capacity to get to agreement is pretty much trashed too. So if you can prioritize that relationship, you can keep working towards some kind of mutually acceptable solution. So now we're going to move from my favorite definition of conflict to my favorite definition of listening. And this definition isn't from a scholarly journal or a mediation handbook. I came across this years ago in a parenting book by Rosalind Wiseman. Her best known book is Queen Bees and Wannabes, but this one is from one of her books on boys called Masterminds and Wingmen. She wrote, "True listening is preparing to be changed by what you hear." I read this and I remember having this really divided reaction to this one sentence. Now, part of me was thrilled because I was already somebody who believed that listening is a superpower that anybody can cultivate. And another part of me was horrified because that part of me really likes to be right about things. And luckily for me, a little metacognition kicked in here, and I noticed I was having these two very different reactions to the same sentence, and that clued me into the fact that this was a very powerful sentence. So for me, reconciling those two reactions came when I focused on the word preparing. You don't have to be changed by what you hear. If someone calls you up and tells you that the sky is orange, you don't have to abandon the idea that the sky is blue. True listening, though, means you are open to the idea of being changed, that you might, in fact, hear that the caller is 10 miles from a forest fire and their sky is indeed orange. So for any of you who are admirers of Thich Nhat Hanh, the late Zen master and peace advocate, he said the same thing, but even more strongly. He said, for things to reveal themselves to us, we need to be ready to abandon our views about them. And again, ready to, in his statement, is like preparing. It's a mindset. It's an openness to the possibility of change. And that is key to active listening. You can have all the technical listening skills in the world, but if you aren't willing to be affected by what you hear, you probably aren't prioritizing the relationship over agreement. I have a poster on the wall of my classroom that says, your mindset determines the process determines the outcome. Mindsets matter. These attitudes that we bring into these interactions determines how we pursue those interactions, and it determines where those interactions go. Preparing to be changed by what you hear is an active listening mindset. So this idea of process is getting us closer to a discussion of skills. And the next thing I want to talk about sits somewhere in between an idea and a skill. And that is the capacity to separate positions on an issue from needs and feelings. I want to give you an example. Like it sounds like many of you, in the past couple of months, I have had so many conversations about Israel and Palestine. And these are conversations with friends, with family, with colleagues, with students, with former students. And they are Muslim, Christian, Jewish, atheist, and no religion in particular. Some have strong sympathies with Palestine, others with Israel, and many are deeply torn. And I heard a really big range of positions on a lot of these related issues. But regardless of their position, people expressed the same needs and feelings again and again. I feel alone. I am horrified. I am outraged. I feel hopeless. I need my truth to be heard. I need people I care about to be safe. I need to be understood. Active listening allows us to get beyond positions and connect with some of those feelings and needs. You feel alone? I am here with you. I may not agree with you, but I am here with you in your pain. You need to be understood, and I want to understand. Help me understand. Now, understanding isn't agreement either, but an amazing thing can happen when you offer someone understanding. Sometimes they offer it to you in return. Now, some of these needs and feelings we can't do anything about. Not many of us here can truly make people safer in the Middle East right now. Connecting with needs and feelings, even ones we can do nothing about, is important though, because these needs and feelings shape our understanding of the issues. I teach mediation, and one of the things I tell my students is not to expect to make any progress on the issues until they've at least recognized the parties' feelings. When you acknowledge someone's feelings, their sense of threat is diminished, and that can immediately make the conversation less contentious. So I want to talk now some about the how of active listening, and I'm going to pinpoint 3 different skills. Here's the thing, though. None of this is rocket science. The ideas are disarmingly simple. Putting them into practice, though, that is hard. So here's our first skill. Be present. This is another way of saying pay attention. In this day and age when we're surrounded by distractions, attention is a gift. And one way of helping ourselves be present is to minimize distractions. Ideally, hard conversations happen face to face. And if you're able to have a face to face conversation, turn off your phone, turn off the news, maybe close your door. Sometimes we have to have hard conversations on the phone or even by text. So if active listening is your goal, pick a time when you aren't also making dinner and supervising homework or scanning email or waiting for a meeting to start. Being present is a lot easier if you can minimize those external distractions. That's only part of it though, and in fact that's the easier part. The harder part is minimizing the internal distractions. For many of us, that means quieting that part of our brain which likes to be right. Preparing to be changed by what we hear means we really have to engage with what is being said. One of my mentors, the late Reverend Bob Evans, had a rather blunt way of putting this. He said, Figuring out your next point while you wait for someone to stop talking isn't listening, it's reloading. We have all done this. I have done this. It is really work not to do this. And that work is active listening. So if you commit to listening to someone well enough that you aren't generating your winning argument while they are talking, then you may need to be comfortable with more silence in your conversation. You might need to ask for a moment to think. And I know this can feel awkward, but rarely does anyone react badly to being told that what they said is worthy of proper consideration. If silence is really tough for you, try having a serious conversation while you go for a walk. That act of walking can fill those quiet moments in a way that many people are more comfortable with than if you are sitting together. And finally, be conscious of how you're signaling being present with your body language. This is cultural. In some cultures, it is all about eye contact. In other cultures, it very much isn't about eye contact. We send a lot of signals with our bodies about our willingness to be changed by what we hear, and attend to what those signals are that you're sending with your body language. So moving on to our next skill, offering understanding. I want to reiterate first that understanding what someone says is not the same as agreeing with them. But when you can demonstrate that you understand them, or even that you want to understand them, you're offering that you respect that person. And one way to offer understanding is with paraphrasing. When I teach mediation, we spend a lot of time on paraphrasing because it's an essential component in mediation. Right now, I'm going to take us through an abridged version, a very slimmed down definition of paraphrasing. So paraphrasing is repeating in your own words what someone else has said. And sometimes people get worried that they need to be a walking thesaurus in order to do this. You don't. You can reuse many of the words of what someone said. You just change it a little bit to make it sound more like you, and so that you are showing that you have processed a little bit about what they have said. Paraphrasing attends to both issues and feelings. Those feelings are really important things about what people are communicating. So when you're paraphrasing, try to pick up not only on those issues, but also the feelings behind those issues, particularly if the person talking to you is emotional about what they're saying. Paraphrasing is focused on the speaker. If somebody tells you that they're upset because their sister is in the hospital, don't immediately respond with saying, oh, well, my sister was just in the hospital. Because when you're offering someone understanding, it's not about you. And it's really not about your sister. You might come to that point eventually, but when you are looking to make someone feel understood, you want to stay focused on them, not with what's going on with you. And finally, paraphrasing withholds judgment. And this is the hardest part because judgment comes in a lot of different forms. Certainly if you tell someone that their idea is crazy, that is judgment. But if they tell you something which is really difficult for them, and you respond with, oh, don't worry about it, I'm sure it's not that bad, that is judgment too. You may mean to be reassuring, but what you're communicating is that their feelings about this matter are wrong. As a related note, this is also why the phrase calm down is probably the most useless phrase in the English language, because it makes people feel judged for the way that they are reacting to things, and being judged is not calming. So I'm going to take you through an example here of paraphrasing. Imagine somebody says to you, I am so upset with our political leaders. Have you heard what they have said about the recent mass shooting? I've written to my representative for all the good that ever does. Sometimes I even wonder why I vote at all. Now, you could say, in response to this, you wrote to your representative about the shooting, and that is a partial paraphrase. You've captured the action of what they said, but in some ways you've really missed the point because a big part of what they're telling you is what they're feeling. They're telling you that they are really upset by what's happening. Another typical response to this would be, well, I wrote to my senator about it, but that isn't focused on the speaker. It would also be tempting to respond to this with saying, voting is so important, you have to vote, but that's judgment. So I'm not telling you to totally refrain from mentioning your message to the senator or your commitment to voting. Just don't say those things first. Offer understanding first, and then come around to your own ideas. So I'm going to give you an example of a full paraphrase here: the issues, the feelings, no judgment, and focused on the speaker. You're deeply frustrated with our politicians when it comes to gun violence. It feels like your voice isn't being heard. And if you are a mediator, you're going to do this level of paraphrasing for almost everything that gets said. But in regular conversation, that gets a little weird. So in regular conversation, you might want to pick out some particular things that people say to paraphrase, particularly things that they're really passionate about. Another thing that you can do, though, is to pick up on just one element of what someone is saying. And when I do this, I most often try to focus on the feeling. So here's sort of like a little mini paraphrase. You're feeling really frustrated. That communicates that you are understanding what that person is saying to you, but it does so in a much more abbreviated way. So I'm going to move on to the third skill here, which is asking questions. And again, it's no secret that one way to show you are listening to someone is to ask relevant questions. In a challenging conversation, though, the way you phrase the question matters. Traditionally, questions start with who, what, where, when, why, how. But if situations are fraught or if trust is low, these sorts of questions can feel like an interrogation and they can inspire defensiveness. So in those sorts of situations, you want to ask open questions. These are questions which are invitations to share. And I'm going to show you some examples. So over here, we've got sort of some traditional questions over on the left side. So you could say, why do you think that? But that could easily make someone defensive. So a more open way to phrase that would be, would you say more about that? Again, a more traditional question could be, where is your evidence for that? But you might get farther if you were to phrase it with, would you be willing to explain the evidence to me? Another traditional or interrogation style question could be, what were you doing the day of the protest? You might try to rephrase that as, tell me about the day of the protest. Now, because we ask questions in all sorts of situations, and because open questions can be useful in lots of different conversations, not just ones about world events, I'm going to offer our final example here, which is, how could you fail the math quiz? I can almost guarantee you're going to end up getting a better conversation going if you phrase it as, help me understand what happened with the math quiz. As you can see here, I've got questions in quotations because often open questions are really statements. But what they share in common here is that they are invitations to share. And phrases like, would you be willing, and help me understand, these are two of my most essential tools, both professionally, but also as a parent. These are the sorts of invitations that people like to say yes to. And this is not a secret. It's not a magic trick. You can know how powerful those phrases are, and they still work. My own two teenagers are well aware of my love of the phrase, help me understand. And it still is really powerful in our conversation because it signals a willingness to be changed by what you hear. Help me understand why Israel is important to you. Help me understand the Palestinian history you mentioned. Help me understand does a lot of active listening work for you. So I'm going to come in towards a close here by telling you about a recent conversation I had with two of my Hartford International University students. They're friends. One is Jewish, one is Muslim, and we talked about how they're having conversations with each other about Israel and Palestine. And what I heard them say is they are prioritizing relationship over agreement. Their views are not polar opposites, but they are quite different. And as the Jewish student said, these are conversations, not confrontations. They're even able to find moments of humor in these conversations. They're using paraphrasing. The Muslim student talked about how using open questions helped her to connect with what she was hearing from her Jewish friend. And I always get really excited when I hear about people using these skills because using them really takes a commitment. As I said earlier, the ideas are simple. Be present, offer understanding, ask open questions. But the practice is hard. Things like paraphrasing feel awkward at first. It takes attention to change from traditional questions to open questions. So these take real commitment to put these skills into use. But it does get more natural with practice. So in summary, peace building work almost always requires work on relationships before there can be work on problem solving. And active listening is a way to prioritize your relationship as you figure out how your two different ideas can share the space. So that's the end of my presentation portion. I'm going to end the screen sharing here so that we can have some question and answer or some conversation.
Thank you so much. It's just an extraordinary amount of information communicated so clearly and so helpfully in such a short period of time. This slideshow will be available in this recording, and perhaps we can also save it, Rick, separately. It's so useful. We may use portions of it at our retreat in January. So
Absolutely.
our style is to recognize people as they raise their hands. Short questions, short answers. We have about 25 minutes together. Rick.
No, I was going to say thank you very much. And one of the things that I wanted to say was that one of the reasons I wanted to connect with Phoebe is that I thought that this would also be something as we go into our holidays with family and friends that maybe we do have, that the conversation is not seamless, that maybe this can be something that you bear in mind as you go, so that you all pass the potatoes without flinging them. So.
Ah, yes, those potatoes. Dick Bunce. You're on mute.
All right, I have a pet peeve. And I'm just
Lay it
gonna
on me.
I'm gonna lay it on you. I'm moderating a meeting of, let's just say, 15 people. And within 5 to 7 minutes, 2 of them have their cell phones out. One might have it in his or her lap. The other puts it right on the table, makes no excuses whatsoever. And they have virtually left the meeting. Now, they might say later, oh, I was just looking up a definition of something to help the meeting along, something like that. But in the final analysis, they have left the meeting. And I feel it as rudeness. It distracts me when I'm facilitating or giving a presentation. And sometimes I just simply stop speaking. I just stop. And then everybody starts suddenly looking around. And I've even warned people, when the cell phones come out, I'm just going to stop and wait until I have your attention. And now I know there are all kinds of ways, wait for the break and all that kind of stuff, then bring your phones out, etc. But people are so glued to their cell phones that they don't even hear that. So what is a good way to handle that? I haven't found it yet.
Yes, I hear your frustration that these are so distracting. I call them the demons of distraction we carry around in our pockets. We volunteer to carry these distractions around with us. one of the rules that I have in my own classroom is that I ask people to have their phones not only silenced, but put away, except if they are, volunteer first responders or in the midst of some sort of a family emergency. I don't want to presume that I know everything that's happening for people, and that sometimes it's important that there's going to be something really critical that's going to come across those phones. I have even taught a class where I had to tell the students, like, I have my phone out here because my father is in the hospital. And you are my first priority, but I do have to monitor my phone too. But that's, in doing that, trying to model that it's only the real emergencies that require us to have our phones with us. That we don't need to look up those definitions in the middle of the meeting. And so I think it's fair to ask at the beginning of a meeting, like, please show respect for everyone who is here by having your phones not only silenced, but put away unless you are experiencing these sorts of emergencies or you are emergency personnel yourself. And I've generally found that is pretty well attended to, not flawlessly, but that it gives people who have an emergency a reason to have their phone. And then sometimes the conversation is like, oh dear, you have your phone out. Is your mother okay? Which then causes other people to put their phones away because they don't want to make it seem like there's emergencies going on in their lives too. That's the only thing that I've found, but I do think it's fair to ask right at the beginning. And it sounds like that's what you are doing in the meetings that you're facilitating as well.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
both. Anthony.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say I really appreciate everything you said, except for one thing I'm going to bring up. But it's so important, these active listening skills. I first learned about this when I went to Israel, Palestine with the Compassionate Listening Project in 2004. And we were trained in a lot of the things that you're sharing, and they're extremely important when you're trying to have conversations with Palestinians and Israelis, and really listen non-judgmentally, and to listen, as you say, for feelings and for values, and not just to respond. There is one thing you said though that jarred me a little bit, and that's when you paraphrase someone by saying you are frustrated. I know in my marriage is a great opportunity for practicing active listening. we often have to do that. And one of the things that triggers my wife and me is when we're told what we're feeling. And instead of saying, you seem really frustrated, that allows the person to say, actually, I'm not frustrated, I'm angry, I'm outraged. Because if I'm told what I'm feeling by someone else, sometimes that feels like I'm being, I don't know, I get very irritated by that. I would prefer for someone to be more curious about what I'm feeling and not tell me what I'm feeling. So I would suggest that, especially if someone is very upset, to say, oh, you're really upset. Are you really frustrated? Are you angry? Tell me more about what you're feeling. That seems to me to be an important part of active listening, is to not make presumptions about what the other person is feeling. There was something else, but I've lost it. But anyway, I just want to say how grateful I am for this presentation, because right now, as go into the holiday season, we need to be active listeners, and we need to be active listeners in the upcoming year, because a lot of our fellow citizens have a lot of issues, and we need to hear them before we try to change them. We need to be open to change ourselves. Thank you, Phoebe.
Yeah. Anthony, thank you. And you raise a very good point that, yes, you seem really frustrated, or I think I'm hearing a lot of frustration from you, can be more of an invitation. One of the things that I talk about with my students, one of the other parts of paraphrasing we spend time on, is that checking for understanding, the did I hear you correctly piece, which comes at the end. And we do spend time on that. So you're absolutely right that the way of sort of making it like, this is what I believe I'm hearing, and there's an implicit help me understand in there by the way you phrase it. So thank you. I appreciate that.
We have 3 more hands up. We want to save time for Carol Francis's presentation at the end. So we'll take 3 short questions and short answers. Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you. Phoebe, I understand that you told this to a colleague the other day, saying, let's agree to disagree is not necessarily a good idea.
Yes, there's one of my pet peeves is the phrase agree to disagree. That often it is a way of shutting someone down to say that. Most often, not most often, I frequently hear it being used in which a person with more power says to someone with less power, your views make me uncomfortable. I don't want to deal with them anymore. And I have enough status that I don't have to think about them if I don't want to. And so that can be the subtext of agree to disagree. And so, yeah, I struggle with that phrase. I look for other ways of saying, boy, we're just going to have to recognize that we care about each other, even though we have very different views on this. That we're going to acknowledge our disagreement, rather than agree to disagree, which has become loaded as a phrase.
Thank you. Anthony, if you've asked your question, take your hand down. My question, Phoebe, is it feels like this is the first half of the conversation. How about the tough second half when you've said all that you've said it, but then you want to speak with integrity. You want to speak as a principled person or with a certain moral sense of whatever the conflict is. So when you get to that second phase, how do you assert your views with respect to the other person, either searching for common ground or eventually recognizing that at least in that particular conversation, you are not you have decided not to change your mind and you're not changing the other person's mind?
Well, I think that it comes with being willing to offer understanding first. And you're right. That is the first half of that conversation. And one of the things that I find is that when you enter into a conversation that way, where you're offering understanding, when you really seek to understand what someone else says, not agree with them, but understand it, because that can bring the emotional temperature of the conversation down, you're very much more likely to be heard yourself in what you say to that other person. There's no guarantee that's going to happen, but generally, if you're able to offer that understanding, you get more of it in return. So it's the first half of a conversation, but it's also something you're going to need to put in again, because you may say, my perspective on this is really different. I'm going to tell you what I think about it. And the person might not, show you understanding of that right away. So you may need to then go and do a little more active listening of what they say about what you said. And then you get another opportunity to say, what is true for you. And so it's slow. One of the things that active listening does is that it slows conversations down, which is both good and bad. In our time crunch world, it's challenging, but it also means that you're not just sort of trading zingers back and forth. So that you do often get opportunities to speak what is true for you, to speak what is integrity, feels authentic and gives you integrity in that conversation. And you're right. You might not get to a place where there is common ground. You might find a tiny bit of common ground, but not a lot. But hopefully you've had that conversation in such a way that you're able to have another conversation later on because you've been able to preserve that relationship with that person, even if you deeply disagree with what they say. But it is slow and it is difficult and it takes a lot of self-control to do it.
Good, thank you. 2 final questions, short answers. Phil.
Okay, thank you. I was so intrigued with your presentation that I kept trying to write some of it down, and I can't write as fast as you speak. And I was wondering if some of your material is available in written form that we could access.
So some of it, there's some blogs that I've written for HIU, which covers some of this. I've got a blog about paraphrasing skills that I co-wrote with a student a few years ago. I've got a blog about using a practice called reflective structured dialogue, which is, it's not paraphrasing, it's a very different dialogue methodology that I used with some Jewish and Muslim colleagues. Not, well, I've used it a lot this fall. But the blog itself is about having a colleague conversation with a Jewish and Muslim colleague several years ago using reflective structured dialogue that brings in some of these same principles as well. I don't have a book, but it sounds like the PowerPoint will be available as well for you in other ways.
So
Yes.
what would be the best ways to access this material?
Well, Phil, here's the answer. Phoebe, I'm going to ask you separately to if you can email your PowerPoint to Rick, who you were in touch. Then Rick will add it to the announcement. Rick?
Okay, I just saw the posting on chat that
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Rick, anything more on that?
I can also put any links that Phoebe sends me to onto the YouTube presentation, so that as you're watching, you can click them there too.
Excellent. Daniel.
Phoebe, this was invaluable as a practice for living for everything. Thank you so much. It struck me as you were speaking that, you know, we are an interfaith organization, which I guess presumes that some of us try to cultivate a relationship with sacred mystery, whatever we understand as God. And it occurred to me in relationship to this is that relationship asks us to be willing to be surprised, which is, I think, something that is part of this kind of dynamic of active listening. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you. Yes, I think that willingness to be surprised by our world, by our beliefs, by the people in our world is absolutely fundamental to continuing to engage with others with grace too. Yeah. So thank you.
Phoebe, we're going to leave. We're going to separate now for Carol Francis's presentation, but please stay with us because I think we'll have a few minutes at the end to wrap up with you. And then we go into our closing circle. And I'd ask Daniel, at the end of our closing circle, we often ask someone to give us some words of hope and spirituality to send us off for the week ahead. So if you would gather your thoughts to do that for us, Daniel. Great.
I'm sharing the page that we have on the website. So these are all for those of you in the LA area. Those are places that you can shop. There's also a Fair Trade LA business directory. These are global companies that you can take a look at and order from. And today's the 15th, so if you want to take a look at that over the weekend, these companies should have enough time to ship you stuff for giving for the holidays. And there's also some websites that you can share with some folks if you'd like about organizations, companies, people that are doing fair trade work. There are things that you can purchase that are pretty amazing, like jewelry that has been made in Cambodia from all of the metal from bombs that we placed in that country about 40 years ago. And there's no better example of turning swords into plowshares than something like that. And we'll have to change this, but yeah, on fairtradela.org, there are a lot of great pop-ups that you can check out, great holiday markets and things like that. For those of us that are Hispanic, some of the great places to get tamales are these fair trade places. So that's always a scramble for our people. I don't know why, but you can go grab some stuff there.
Carol
Because they're hard to
Francis?
make.
Yes, it takes a village. It's
It
literally
takes
one
a
of
whole
those.
team to make tamales.
Yeah.
We will put out these links. It's a very important way. A lot of money is spent in the holidays, and think of it going to the communities that Carol Francis has highlighted. That's really important.
This
Rick
is
is holding.
a free trade or fair trade object that my wife bought. She collects arcs. It's something that she's into, and this is made in Bethlehem from Palestinian olive trees.
And
So
this is not just at the
Can you pull
December.
it back a little bit, Rick? It's a little blurry.
I know.
This is
Yeah.
not just the
Very.
December.
There.
This is not just the December holidays. We all have birthdays and events and anniversaries and gift giving throughout the year. So please think of this. Capture the links that we'll be sending you that are in the chat. And make this an annual, not an annual, but a yearly opportunity. I just want to briefly return to Phoebe and thank you so much. I have the group knows that I am used to saying the following, that Phoebe and Katie, you are now card-carrying members of ICUJP, and we welcome you back. I think we're going to expand our partnership. There's so much we are aligned with the Hartford program that I can see future programs to learn more about what you're doing and to cooperate together in this work. It's so vital, and to find good partners is a joy and a blessing. So thank you both so much. Yes.
Could I make a quick announcement?
Yes, Phoebe.
I am still looking for students for my 2024 start of my program. The deadline is passed for international students, but domestic students can still apply to the 1-year Master of Arts in International Peace Building. It's a face-to-face residential program here in Hartford with lots of funding available. So we would love to have applicants that you are aware of apply to this program. They can go to the Hartford International University website and proceed there for applications. So if you know people who'd be interested, please push them in our direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Send a link about that announcement to Rick and we'll push it out.
Absolutely.
You've got 17 students on this screen right now that may apply. So
excellent.
So get ready. First I saw Daniel and then Donna.
And this is no coincidence at all, but on the morning of January 16th, the day after MLK Day, Interfaith Solidarity Network is hosting, in the spirit of MLK, peace building. And that's going to be in at St. Paul's Church in Tarzana. I'll send to Rick the particulars if that's okay.
I think one of the most important things in the history of the peace movement was Martin Luther King's understanding that he had to speak out against the war in Vietnam, that civil rights here was of a piece with human rights around the world.
His speech on that is going to be featured. Yes.
Good. Donna?
Hi, I'm getting ready to leave because I got to get active at work, but I just want to say thank you so much. I actually learned some skills that I can use at work. because conflicts do happen here. And so I'm going to put them to use, and I'm going to put them to use in my personal relationships. And so I'm going to say goodbye, and I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the new year.
Wonderful. So now we virtually hold hands. We create our circle. This is a moment to lift up friends, family, and others who need a good word.
I just want to say that sometimes you do have examples of technology doing a good thing. And so I want to thank NPR and for bringing us Phoebe and Katie, and thank you very much.
My excuse me, my daughter leaves today to New York to comfort her Northwestern classmate. My daughter is 44, and this young man is dying of cancer. Tessa has flown back to New York. Now this will be her second trip, just to be with Jed, just to hold his hand, to laugh, to share memories. And on behalf of this group, I'm lifting up Jed.
I'd like to lift up a young Palestinian man I met at the vigil. His name is Nidal, which means, I think, freedom or victory in Arabic. And his family is living in Rafah. He's lost a couple of his family members, but these family members are still alive. And so I want you to hold Nidal and his family and other families in your prayers.
Thank you, Anthony. Anyone else? I'm grateful to all of you for staying a little extra. And let's close this meeting out with some words from Daniel.
I've adapted this from a New Zealand prayer book. Let us pray. God of peace, let us, your people, know that at the heart of turbulence, there is an inner calm that comes from faith in you, from the practice of active listening, from prioritizing relationship over the need for agreement, from true listening, preparing to have our hearts be changed. Keep us from being content with things as they are, that from this central peace, there may come a creative compassion, a thirst for justice, and a willingness to give ourselves in the spirit of all that we hold as sacred. And we all say, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Daniel, very much. Thank you, everybody.
Before you leave, can I say something? I have to leave. Unfortunately, I can't attend the board meeting today, but I wanted to encourage everybody to read Dr. King's final Christmas sermon. If you haven't read that yet, it is one of the most powerful statements on peace and anti-war that I've ever read. So I just want to encourage you. I sent it out via our listserv. Dr. King's Christmas sermon, final Christmas sermon. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Steve, but
no, it's perfectly acceptable. Thank you, everybody.